First of all, congratulations for being with us at this unearthly hour, and whether you made it via the late-night movie, the all-night party, or the simple alarm clock, let's hope the reward is a race to remember and that world title at last for Britain's Nigel Mansell. Well, the Australian Grand Prix at Adelaide is the last round of the 1986 World Championship. The title lies between three drivers, and the issue is very straightforward indeed. Nigel Mansell has a 6-point lead over the defending champion Alain Prost, 7-point lead over his Williams teammate Nelson Piquet. Both Prost and Piquet have to win in Australia to keep alive their hopes. If Mansell can just finish in the top three, then he becomes the first British world champion since James Hunt 10 years ago. Well, I'm delighted to say that the Williams boss, Frank Williams, is able to join us in the studio once again, and we'll be talking to Frank a little bit later in the programme. But while we're waiting the last couple of minutes for the satellite connection to be made to Australia, let's just remind you of Mansell's triumphant season. And anticipating his success, we paid a visit on him at home in the Isle of Man way back in March. It gave us an insight into the determination of the man, and from then on, the success just unfolded.
I feel this is the big year, big opportunity with a great team to do it.
Mansell going through, taking second place and taking Nelson Piquet down into second gear, and Mansell, if he gets it right, can sprint out of the rear wing of Senna's car. Senna moves across, he's keeping Mansell back, and he wins. Mansell won't like that any more than he likes at Brazil. Nigel Mansell wins the Belgian Grand Prix. Out go the Union Jacks from the Williams pit.
Almost home now, Nigel Mansell comes down to the pit's hairpin for the last time to win after a superbly dominant drive. And takes the checkered flag. Just look at him, shaking his arm in euphoric delight. Great stuff.
And I'm just delighted to be up there pitching in, and I'm looking forward, and I'm very quietly optimistic that at every race this year we'll be pitching in there, and if we've got enough points at the end of the year, who knows?
He's in a beautiful position to pass Prost, and he does it. Nigel Mansell from the Isle of Man, from Port Erin, is back in the leadership of the French Grand Prix.
He's been passed by Senna, he has been passed by Berger, he's been passed by both the McLarens, and a big coming together.
And a very bad start for Nigel Mansell. Can this be his lucky day on the restart? He's going to have a second crack at it.
Exits the last corner, crosses the line, and Mansell is the winner. Great stuff.
Yes, Nigel Mansell, overjoyed with every conceivable reason, takes his 5th Grand Prix win of 1986. Senna gets away well, and Patrese sprints through, and Mansell has stalled. He's kept it running, but it's a terrible start for the Englishman. Nigel Mansell gets away very badly indeed.
The story so far, now what's the last chapter going to hold in Adelaide? There's Nelson Piquet, who's alongside Nigel Mansell on the front row of the grid in Adelaide. Mansell is on pole, and that world title beckons. The commentators, as ever, James Hunt and Murray Walker, they're already talking to audiences in Australia.
Ayrton Senna And the news from Adelaide is that the weather conditions, which were very good yesterday, are not so good today. And I now welcome viewers in Britain to the BBC coverage of this Australian Grand Prix, which, as I say, is going to be the one that will decide the World Championship, the most important race of the year. The weather conditions here are very, very iffy. Yesterday it was bright and sunny, perfect weather conditions for the practice. You look now at René Arnoux, who is in 5th position on the grid. But as I look up out of the box across to the Mount Lofty ranges, I see lowering rain clouds overhead. There's quite a stiff breeze blowing. There is a hint of rain in the air, and if that happens, it could change the whole complexion of the race. Gerhard Berger there, the Austrian who won the Mexican Grand Prix in the Benetton BMW, in 6th position on the grid. And incidentally, he was 5th fastest this morning in the half-hour practice. And in that half-hour practice, as you look at Keke Rosberg, 7th on the grid, Ayrton Senna was fastest. That's the man who put up pole position time last year. Alain Prost, very significantly, was 2nd fastest in the practice warm-up this morning. Nigel Mansell was 3rd fastest, again faster than his teammate Nelson Piquet, who was 4th. Gerhard Berger was 5th, and Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari, going much better here today than he did yesterday, was in 6th position. Johnny Dumfries 12th, Derek Warwick 13th, Brundle 15th, and Jonathan Palmer 17th. And that was Philippe Alliot. Here is Michele Alboreto, the Italian, in the Ferrari. And for viewers all around the world, the hot news is that Thierry Boutsen has signed to drive the Benetton BMW next year. All sorts of personalities are here amongst this enormous crowd at Adelaide, including Mr. Honda himself, who is hoping to see his engines propel the world champion today. They already propel the world championship car of 1986, the Williams Honda. And there, very well up the grid, further than he has been all season, is the Italian Andrea De Cesaris, who told me this morning that they've stopped experimenting with the Minardi and decided to put it back to its basic form, as a result of which it has gone much better. Now, the next man you should be seeing on the grid, and there he is Stefan Johansson, who had a colossal crash in practice in his Ferrari, jumped out of it, hopped away. I thought he had broken his leg, but fortunately he's perfectly okay. A bit battered around the rib cage, but otherwise feeling in good shape. That is Teo Fabi, who went off this morning and completely destroyed his race Benetton, so he's out in the spare car. That's had to be set up very hurriedly indeed. 1 minute to go to the start of the parade lap for the Australian Grand Prix, round 16 of the World Championship, the last round that will decide the World Championship. Johnny Dumfries in 14th place on the grid, and there is the camera on his car, from which we have had some sensational pictures in practice and will no doubt be getting more during the race. You're looking through that camera now forwards to Teo Fabi's car, to Johansson's car, to De Cesaris, Streff, Alboreto, Alliot, Rosberg, Berger, Arnoux, Prost, Senna, Piquet, and pole position man Nigel Mansell. Remember, last year in the Australian Grand Prix, Nigel Mansell was 2nd on the grid next to Senna. There was a tremendous coming together after Mansell's gearbox had blown and he went on. James, this is the big one.
It certainly is, and Nigel Mansell has certainly set about this race meeting so far as if he really means business. He put in an absolutely electrifying lap right at the beginning of the final qualifying session yesterday, going 1.5 seconds quicker than anybody else, set the target, and although they got towards him, they never really looked like approaching the time that he had done. So, very big moment for Nigel Mansell. The start is going to be vital. He wanted to be on pole because the safest place to be for incidents and stuff is to be in front. The circuit this year has proved a little less abrasive and a little less difficult on tyres as the surface is no longer so green and new. And we don't expect a lot of tyre trouble in the race, although the Goodyear runners have been pretty undecided as to whether they want to run the medium B compound tyre or the softer, grippier but less durable C compound. Alain Prost has in fact gone for the harder B compound in the McLaren team, and Keke Rosberg has gone for the softer Cs. There we see the whole field weaving around. That's to get heat into these tyres. We had a shower just as the cars went out onto the grid half an hour ago, which I reckon must have set quite a few hearts aflutter because they're all on dry tyres, but that shower has ceased. There's no rain at the moment, but it looks a strong possibility that we will get showers during the race. Of course, if there is a shower, the track is wet enough to necessitate the use of rain tyres, the race will be stopped, people allowed to change, and then restarted. There's Johnny Dumfries's view. And we'll hope to see some of the start from that, if not, as it happens, a bit later, because the start should be pretty exciting, the first couple of corners, from Dumfries's point of view, because he's right in the middle of the pack. Coming round, Mansell leads them round the final hairpin, slowing it right down, of course, to try and get the field to bunch up behind him, so he doesn't have to sit too long with the car, hopefully in gear this time. After the disaster he had in Mexico, I'm quite sure he won't be making that mistake again. But he won't want to sit there with the gear for too long, because the clutch drags on the flywheel and tends to overheat.
Two cameras, that is Johnny Dumfries, and we also have one in Patrick Tombé's car. There it is. So this race, 82 laps, and that is going to be as near 2 hours as makes no difference, maybe over 2 hours, in which case it will be stopped on the 2-hour mark. This is absolutely the critical moment of the race. Nelson Piquet and Mansell together. And it's go, and a superb start from Nigel Mansell. Senna goes through into second place ahead of Piquet. The two McLaren slot in behind them into the chicane. Is anybody going to go off this year? It looks to me as though they're bunching up well and getting through. No problems at the chicane, and Senna is challenging for the start, and he goes through and he takes the lead. Senna takes the lead on the right-hander at Wakefield Turn. Now up to East Terrace Bend, the left-hander. It's Senna, Mansell, Piquet, and the McLaren going through ahead of the Williams, and coming towards us, it is Ayrton Senna in the lead. It is Piquet second. It is Rosberg in third position. Mansell is down to fourth position. Well, there's a turn up for the book, because Nigel Mansell has lost his lead and Gerhard Berger is well up. And look at the way that the first three are breaking away. Senna, the Williams and the McLaren absolutely together, and Piquet going through and trying to take Senna. One Brazilian passes another, and we've got a third leader before even one lap has been completed. And it is Piquet, Senna, Rosberg, Mansell, and then Prost. Now they're approaching the tremendously fast Decaturville Terrace, the Brabham Straight, where they were doing 215 miles an hour during practice. And Piquet, he's breaking away.
Yes, Piquet really meaning business. Tremendous first lap from him, very aggressive indeed. Mansell did what I think was probably right. He got a good start, but there was a lot of aggressive driving going on around him, and so I think he went for the defensive technique. Remember that Prost or Piquet have to win to stand any chance of beating Nigel, and he has got to finish out of the first three. As Alain Prost has a look, and there was a bit of confusion at the start. That was Michele Alboreto with a damaged car coasting in. Arnoux did not get off the line very well. There was a bit of bumping and tumbling going on. And Prost now having a good look.
René Arnoux into the pits. He had to be one of the favourites for the race because he started well up on the grid in fifth position. Already he is effectively out of it. Michele Alboreto is in trouble, and Keke Rosberg, driving in his last Grand Prix in his superb career, is really challenging Ayrton Senna. The order on the second lap: Piquet leading for Williams Honda, then Senna, there he is, and Rosberg is going through. Keke Rosberg charging, he means to win this one. He won in Adelaide last year in the Williams Honda. This is his last Grand Prix. He has had a terrible season. The highest that Keke Rosberg has finished is second position and a couple of fourth places, and he is only in fifth position in the championship, which is well down by his standards. And just look at the way that Rosberg is pulling away already from Senna, and it's Piquet through, building up a big lead. Then it's Rosberg second, Senna third, Mansell fourth, Prost fifth, Berger sixth, then a gap. Philippe Streff well up in seventh place, Alio is eighth, Johansson is ninth, and Alan Jones, driving probably his last race for the Lola Ford team, is in 10th position.
Well, the form at the moment seems to be possibly significant with the tyre choices, because it's the drivers who went for C compound all round, Piquet and Rosberg, who seem to be going away, because Senna has B's on the rear, he's got C fronts, and Prost, who seems to be struggling at the moment, has B's all round. However, we would expect that to be quicker, but there's a long way to go, and there may be some doubt over the durability of the C's.
Yeah, just a quick word about the World Championship now, as out of the race already goes Piercarlo Ghinzani. As ever, the Osella has failed to last very long, and unfortunately we may well expect to see Alan Berg join him soon. But with Piquet leading, with Rosberg charging in second place and actually closing up on the Finn and pulling away from third place man Ayrton Senna and fourth place man Nigel Mansell, in terms of the World Championship, very quickly, if Piquet or Prost win and Nigel Mansell finishes fourth or lower, Mansell will not win the championship. So it's absolutely critical to him. But the race now is well and truly on, with Keke Rosberg second, number 2 appropriately enough, closing on Nelson Piquet, and both of them pulling away. It's worth saying at this point too that the Williams team are extremely worried about fuel consumption, and Piquet is setting an absolutely searing pace in a race that's going to last at almost the full 2-hour distance, if not the full 2 hours, in which case he may be overdoing it. The McLarens are better on fuel consumption, but Keke Rosberg certainly too is going. And in the background you see Ayrton Senna with Nigel Mansell right behind him and going through, I do believe. Nigel Mansell going through and taking third position. So it's Mansell third, Senna fourth, Prost fifth, Berger sixth, and we are now on lap 4 out of this 82-lap race with still a long way to go. Watch the action. Mansell, well, Mansell's made his break. He's got ahead of Senna. Senna, as James said, is on a very unusual tyre combination in this race. He's got C's on the front, B's on the rear, which will help him in terms of longevity. It's going to be entirely up to the drivers whether they stop. Now, here is the 7th place man coming towards us, and it's Philippe Streff doing very well in the Tyrrell Renault. Race order, lap 4. Piquet, Rosberg, Mansell up into 3rd place, Senna down to 4th, being caught by Alain Prost, the world champion, who has got to win this race if he is to make it a back-to-back championship, winning in 1985 and 1986.
Well, Mansell is now where I think he'd want to be, other than being out in the lead in front, but he won't certainly be trying to chase the hares in the form of Nelson Piquet and Keke Rosberg. Remember that 3rd place will ensure him the championship, whatever else happens. He'll be able to take it quite defensively now. I think he's got the legs on Ayrton Senna, so he won't feel too threatened from behind, and he would be quite happy to be on his own and having a lonely race. Prost, of course, will be very keen to get past Senna, You can see the humidity here, the water vapor coming off the vortices created by the wings of the cars. These two have really set a scorching pace.
Indeed they have, because Keke Rosberg, with a full fuel load still, has shattered his own lap record of 1985. There's the race order, and I'll tell you that Rosberg has just gone round in 1 minute 22.8 seconds, and that is a full second faster than his Williams-Honda lap record of last year. Incidentally, I know that Frank Williams, the head man of the Williams team, is sitting in London watching this race, seeing his man, Nelson Piquet, a World Championship contender, having won it twice already, in the lead, and Nigel Mansell, there he is in third position, followed still by Senna and Prost and Berger, very close together. But Rosberg is going to be challenging for the lead very shortly, and Prost is trying to take Senna, who is in fourth place. Berger holding a watching brief in the Benetton BMW. The lead car on Pirelli tyres. All the five in front of him are on Goodyear. And there is an uncomfortable looking Nigel Mansell. If Mansell stays where he is now, he is in command of the World Championship. Third position. And I'm happy to say that the rain is holding off. There's a lot of moisture in the air, but it has not yet turned into rain.
The leading pair have now pulled a 10-second gap back to Nigel Mansell, so they're really setting a scorching pace. Looking very comfortable. He's got the little bit of air that he wanted to have between himself and Senna. Prost, of course, is very anxious to get round Senna as soon as possible, but doesn't look so quick on the straight.
And look at that, Keke Rosberg in front of Nelson Piquet. So Rosberg leads the Australian Grand Prix, and that's the first time he's been at the front of a Grand Prix since he left the Williams-Honda team. Magnificent bit of driving. Rosberg started from 7th position on the grid. He's got ahead of Berger, he's got ahead of Arnoux, he's got ahead of Prost and Senna and Piquet. And of course Nigel Mansell, and now he leads with Piquet there in 2nd position, with Nigel Mansell in 3rd place, with Alain Prost in 4th position ahead of Senna. So the McLarens are eating into the opposition. This is what a lot of us expected to happen, because in the qualifying, not the qualifying, the half-hour practice that we had this morning, as ever, the McLarens were better than they were in the qualifying session yesterday, when full boost is called for, because the TAG engines do not take the boost that the Honda, the BMW and the Renault engines do. So Keke Rosberg, grimly driving in his 114th career, the man with 5 wins behind him all the way, is on his way to make it 6 as they go down the Brabham Straight into the right-hander at Foster's hairpin. Now they accelerate away towards the paddock turn, racetrack hairpin behind them, into paddock turn. This is where Patrick Tambay went off very badly in the Lola in practice. Now down to the 1st gear, Foster's hairpin at about 110 kilometres, accelerate away up into 2nd, 3rd, 4th, towards the chicane at about 140 k's, and Rosberg pulling away from Piquet now in 2nd position. We are on lap 9. And now we travel with Johnny Dumfries, who is in 11th place in the Lotus Renault. And in front of Dumfries, it's Teo Fabi. Now we're riding past the grandstands into the S's. The left, right, left. Teo Fabi goes through, now the left, now we're coming up to Gumtree Bend, past it into Wakefield Turn, which is a second gear corner. Watch Johnny Dumfries' right hand as he changes gear. You can see his helmet with the colours of Scotland on in the driving mirror. You can see the stabs of flame from Teo Fabi's turbo as he backs off and then accelerates away. Now we're going up towards Market's Turn, which is where the fruit markets of Adelaide are. There they are on the left. That's the Stag Hotel on the right. Now we're going down Rundle Road at about 130 kilometres an hour into the third gear Brewery Bend. There's the big brewery in front of us. Now we're on the fastest part of the course, building up to 330 kilometres an hour, which is over 200 miles an hour. Coming down to first gear. Watch Dumfries' hand come off the steering wheel. Down a gear, down another gear. Hard right into racetrack hairpin, and now left into paddock turn. A wonderful, takes you back to the old days, James.
Yes, tremendous. It's a tremendous view, that. It really is very good. And it gives you just an idea, some idea of just how hard a driver has to work on a circuit like this. You see Dumfries fighting away at the steering wheel. Remember, the steering is very heavy on these cars. There's a lot of physical effort to go into this. Meanwhile, at the front there is Keke Rosberg, who is pulling away quite comfortably now from Nelson Piquet. He's not lapping quite as quick as he did in the opening laps, so watch out for tyre problems. And Piquet seems to be struggling to hold on. Rosberg is now lapping around about the mid-123s. Finish line. 10 laps. Nigel Mansell still holding third place.
Well, since I am... now we're with Patrick Tambay. Now contrast the styles and the driving of Johnny Dumfries in the Lotus Ford and Patrick Tambay having what may well be his last race in the Lotus Ford. And of course Dumfries in the Lotus Renault, and let me get it right, Tambay in the Lola Ford, with a very strong rumour seething round Adelaide that the Ford engine will be going to the Benetton team next year, which will be Teo Fabi and Thierry Boutsen. But Patrick Tambay is on his way into the chicane and out of it. You can see that, as with Johnny Dumfries, of course, the gear lever is on the right. You can see that white gauge in front of Patrick Tambay is the turbo boost gauge. So when he moves his head, watch the needle and see how the boost pressure goes up. You see it moving there. He's probably up to nearly 4 bar, about 3.8 bar, which is 3 times atmospheric pressure. And now Keke Rosberg still in the lead. There he is. There is Keke Rosberg, and Alain Berg, as I predicted, is already in trouble and almost out of the race in the second Ocella.
Yes, and Rosberg has speeded up again. He's now done another fastest lap.
And there is the Minardi, one of the Minardis, and it is the car of Alessandro Nannini, who has driven beautifully smoothly all season, and he's really blotted his copybook in the Australian Grand Prix, but hopefully he's all right. No sign of him in the cockpit.
Yes, that looks like a pretty big shunt. He must have hit very hard indeed, but if you look at the front of the monocoque, the footwell appears to be undamaged, as Rosberg goes serenely on his way. He's some 4.5 seconds in front of Nelson Piquet, although I think getting past the back marker may have regained a little bit of ground for Piquet. And there is Alain Prost, who has got in front of Nigel Mansell. So Prost has passed Mansell. Prost now in 3rd place, and Mansell at the moment in 4th place, but still in the championship winning position, courtesy of Keke Rosberg, who's out front.
Yes, if Keke Rosberg won this race, it would automatically win the World Championship for Nigel Mansell if he stayed where he is now in 4th position. But Alain Prost, as ever, the wily, experienced tactician that he is starting to charge. He started off comparatively slowly, but now he is on his way. There is the world champion now behind Nelson Piquet in 3rd position, so the 2 McLarens are 1st and 3rd.
I'm wondering, with Nani's car there, they're thinking of stopping the race because it looks in a pretty dangerous place to be, and it looks as if it's going to be pretty difficult to move. Now, Prost will be mainly concerned with chasing Nelson Piquet, because if he can get past Piquet, I would think that there's every chance that Keke Rosberg will be asked to hand the race to Alain Prost, although it would be a sad thing personally for Keke, because it's a lovely way to go out to win your last Grand Prix. It's the perfect finish to a very distinguished career that he's had, but gentleman that he is, I'm sure he will work for his team and help his teammates. So that is a situation that I'm sure will be causing Mansell some concern as he watches Prost pulling away from him and heading towards Nelson Piquet.
Yes, if Alain Prost, that you're looking at now, won the Australian Grand Prix and Nigel Mansell finished in 4th place, which is where he is now, Prost would win the championship by 1 point. But Prost has still got to catch Piquet and pass him. Prost would still then have to catch Rosberg, and whilst James says, and I'm sure he's right, that Keke Rosberg is a perfect gentleman, the temptation to win his last Grand Prix, knowing that there could be no penalty, would be very, very grave indeed. So now Rosberg leads Piquet with Prost 3rd, Mansell 4th, Senna in 5th position, Gerhard Berger in 5th place, Stefan Johansson is 7th, and Alan Jones well up in 8th position with the increased power Ford V6 engine behind him. Philippe Streff is 9th, Dumfries is 10th, Theo Fabi is 11th, Patrese is 12th. Then it's Martin Brundle, followed by Fabi, Warwick, Alio, Tombe, Boutsen, De Cesaris, Palmer and Dana. And you look now at René Arnoux back in the race after having gone into the pits.
And Alain Prost is catching Nelson Piquet, slowly but surely catching him. And incidentally, we have news that Nannini, who we saw had disappeared from his car, we didn't see the accident happen, but we have news that he is all right. And I'm glad to see that the marshals are now trying to move that rather destroyed car, because it would be certainly a good thing to get it away from the apex of that corner.
Now look at this. René Arnoux, looking in his mirrors, sees Nelson Piquet behind him. Arnoux knows that Piquet is well up in the race and moves over and lets him through, which hasn't been a hallmark of René Arnoux in the past. He has been accused of being inclined to get in the way, but he's acting in a perfectly gentlemanly way in this vital race for Piquet. And now Arnoux has got his arch rival from the Renault days closing up on him. And there was a colossal conflict between Alain Prost and René Arnoux when they were both in the Renault team. And it resulted in René Arnoux leaving and going to Ferrari. Well, I wonder if he's going to be equally courteous when he sees the shape of the red and white McLaren and the number 1 of Alain Prost, who is in 3rd place chasing Nelson Piquet, and there's about 5 seconds between them.
He's closed it, actually, well, he's just closed it down to 3 seconds now with the delay that Arnoux caused Piquet before he was able to fight his way past. But of course, that can concertina out again if René Arnoux is less than helpful to his compatriot.
Yeah, so we're not saying much about Keke Rosberg as Alain Prost closes up on Arnoux. Now we're going to see whether the Frenchman in the front lets the Frenchman behind through and improves his chances of catching Nelson Piquet. Mansell still in fourth position. Arnoux moves over. Prost goes through. The gap you can see between Nelson Piquet in second place and Alain Prost in third position. Still with Mansell fourth. Still with Senna fifth, still now with Johansson in sixth position. So the Ferraris are going much better. And Teo Fabi is in the pits already. Now he's racing in the spare car, as I said earlier on. He went out in the warm-up period and comprehensively destroyed his race car. And already he has come in to change his Pirelli tyres, which surprises me, because his teammate Gerhard Berger went through the Mexican Grand Prix and won it without stopping, and we rather expected the Benettons to be trying to do the same thing here. And since Fabi started on exactly the same tyre combination, soft front and medium rear as Berger, I wonder if we're going to see Gerhard Berger come into the pits. He's in seventh place at the moment. Ahead of him, Stefan Johansson in sixth place, Senna fifth, Mansell fourth, Prost third, Piquet second, Rosberg in the lead. There he is. And look at the way Rosberg's scything through the field. He's now past De Cesaris, he's passed Jonathan Palmer, he's lapped Jonathan Palmer in the Zach speed. There is Alan Berg, still motoring in the Osella. That's Hubroten Gatter. There is Christian Danner. This is Piquet second. That is Prost third. There is Arnoux, who has been lapped, and behind him is Nigel Mansell in fourth place. And Mansell is now 9 seconds behind Alain Prost, who is third.
And Alan Jones is in 8th place and closing on Gerhard Berger. So Berger is going backwards a bit, but a good drive by Alan Jones.
Prost is the man to watch from the point of view of World Championship interest. Keke Rosberg is now leading by 9 seconds. But if Prost can get ahead of Piquet, he will be on target for the World Championship, because down in fourth position is Nigel Mansell. If Prost can get past Piquet, he could then close up on his teammate Keke Rosberg, who might well get an order to move over and let Prost through.
And that was Alan Jones. We just saw a quick flash then, and he's passed Berger. So Jones moves up into 7th place. Although I didn't like what I saw in that little flash, because there seemed to be a bit of fluid coming out of the back of his car. But of course it could just have been, oh no, it's smoking badly. And and that looks like all over.
Johnny Dumfries gives us the thumbs up. That was courteous of him. He's just spun. Johnny Dumfries is saying to the millions of viewers all over the world, don't worry, folks, I'm okay. Now, I think this is a replay of how it happened. Watch Dumfries. He changes up, comes up to a car behind him, locks his front wheels. It's one of the Tyrrells. It's Martin Brundle.
Yeah, and he hit the oil. That was a lot of oil being dropped by Alan Jones's car. So that's the end of Jones. And that really looked very slippery indeed.
Johnny Dumfries waves to let Piquet through and Prost through, and Prost is now right up with Nelson Piquet. There is the race leader, Keke Rosberg, 10 seconds ahead of the battle for second place, and there it is. Nelson Piquet goes into the right-hander at Wakefield turn. Look for the Williams behind it, the red and white of the McLaren of Alain Prost. There they are.
And I do hope the marshals have got the oil flags going on that pretty big oil slick that came from the back of Jones's car. We saw just how it can catch you out. You saw Johnny Dumfries as he went into that corner. He locked his brake, and he was behind another car, so he wasn't able to see the oil, and of course arrived. And there is Alan Jones. Just you can see him in the shade of the garage in his light-coloured driving suit. So that is Jones out of the race with a very, very dead engine.
Lap 17 out of 82. Long way to go. Race order. Keke Rosberg leads, 10 seconds. Nelson Piquet, less than 2 seconds. Alain Prost, 5 seconds. Nigel Mansell, 4th. Then about 15 seconds, Ayrton Senna 5th. 6th position, Stefan Johansson. 7th is Berger. 8th is Streff. 9th is Patrese. 10th is Martin Brundle, going well. 11th, Derek Warwick, going well. 12th, Philippe Alliot. And now Piquet is up with the Minardi of De Cesaris and the Zach Speed in front. So we could well get some changes here.
Yes, it's interesting to watch Prost, how patient he is with Nelson Piquet. He's driving an extremely sensible race. Obviously can afford to take no chances. You can't win a race unless you're in it. And with the oil going down and so many back markers around, he's driving with some caution. He may be hoping, though, that with all this traffic, that there's a chance he'll get a little bit of a break.
James, with this terrific struggle going on and the World Championship hanging on a thread, I am very surprised, frankly, that Nigel Mansell is content with 4th position and not fighting for a higher one. Do you think he's just playing a waiting game and seeing how things sort themselves out in front?
No, I doubt it. I would think that he's going, as he always does, as fast as he possibly can. He was very cautious indeed in the opening lap, which was probably a sensible thing to do because there was a lot of pushing and shoving up front. Piquet took it really aggressively. Senna, as always, was pretty aggressive, and Mansell was a bit unfortunate to get elbowed so suddenly down to 4th place. But I'm sure now that the race is settled, he's going as fast as he possibly can, and he has, in fact, courtesy of the traffic, closed up a little bit on this battle for 2nd place.
This is a totally absorbing race. We have the unique situation in 1986 of the unseen but very much there. Keke Rosberg in his last Grand Prix of his long career, leading now by an ever-increasing margin. He is 12 seconds in front of this battle for Piquet and for 2nd place between Piquet, world champion of 1981 and 1983, and number 1 in the red and white McLaren, Alain Prost, the reigning world champion of 1985. Both of them in contention for this year's World Championship, and in 4th place, number 5, Nigel Mansell, the 3rd World Championship contender. Ayrton Senna, another Grand Prix winner of 1986, down low for him, 5th position.
I think I see a little bit of graining, a little bit of marking up on the tread of the right front on Nelson Piquet's car. So there is a possibility that we're going to have some tyre bombers. The right front looks just a little bit marked on Piquet's car. But at the same time, Prost doesn't seem to be as right on Piquet's tail as he ought to be able to pick up any hold-ups that Piquet suffers when lapping slower cars.
James, very important point. No one can be closer to the McLaren team than you are. My information was that Alain Prost was starting this race on the softest race compound, C's. I suspect you have later knowledge in saying that he's on the harder compound, B's, in which case he could theoretically go right through.
That's right. They did, in fact, they wanted to keep it a secret what tyres he was running, and they told me an hour before the race that they had decided to run B's on Prost's car, but they didn't particularly ask me not to tell anybody until the race had started. But I could see marking on both the right-hand side tyres on Piquet. It's not serious, but the front doesn't look very fit. It could even be blistered.
Lap 22, race order. Keke Rosberg leads, 14 seconds. Nelson Piquet 2nd, 1 second ahead of Alain Prost. Less than that, I guess, now. You see for yourselves. Nigel Mansell is still 4th. Ayrton Senna is still 5th. Stefan Johansson, again in the points in the Ferrari, unlike his teammate Michele Alboreto. And Johansson has been fired. What a travesty of justice. In 7th position, Philippe Streff. 8th, Riccardo Patrese. 9th, Gerhard Berger. And off speeds Piquet. Wowee! Now, Piquet goes off, Prost goes through. Now we have the 2 McLarens, 1st and 2nd. Rosberg leads and Prost is 2nd. This could change the race.
and Mansell went through, so that's put Mansell into third place. So whatever, and there we see it again, that's the replay, and you see Nelson spin the car, he kept the engine running, but he dropped behind teammate Nigel Mansell, and that may just be because have been caused by the fact that his tyres are not quite up to full performance. Doesn't excuse the mistake because it doesn't happen suddenly. You can feel that the tyres are losing grip, but that was a most untimely error by Nelson Piquet.
Nigel Mansell, there he is, puts himself back into World Championship contention because Prost has still got to take the lead from Rosberg, and we don't know whether he's going to. And if Nigel Mansell stays where he is, no matter what happens, he will win the World Championship. But is Nelson Piquet going to take it lying down? He is not. He's down in 4th position, and he will be fighting back.
Yes, of course, if he is in tyre trouble, he won't be fully equipped to fight. But, and behind them, there's a long gap now to Ayrton Senna. So the only threat to Mansell at the moment is Nelson Piquet.
There is the Englishman. The winner in Belgium, in Canada, in France, in Great Britain, a magnificent victory, and in Portugal. 2 second places, 2 third places, 1 fourth place, 2 fifths. Leads the World Championship with a total of 72 points. And now is the time to remind you that because of the rules of the World Championship, which say that only the best 11 scores can count, Nigel Mansell has already had to discard 2 points for a 5th place, making his effective score 70, compared with Prost's 64, Piquet's 63. Piquet can count every point he gets in the race, and there is Mansell ahead of Adelaide.
Mansell is in fact a good bit closer now to Alain Prost, courtesy of the problems when he was following Nelson Piquet. He did appear to be in a little bit of tyre trouble, and I would think that one can confirm that because Piquet seems to be dropping back as well. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we don't see Piquet go for another set of tyres pretty soon.
Yes, the gap between Prost and Mansell is about 5 seconds now, with Piquet 2 seconds behind Mansell in 4th position, and Keke Rosberg leading by 17 seconds. There you see in the one picture for a moment, Nigel Mansell, 3rd position, and his teammate Nelson Piquet in 4th place. And here again is the leader, and the fastest man so far is Keke Rosberg, who's gone marginally faster than the previous record lap I gave you, which was 1:22.8. He's now taken 0.2 of a second off that, 1:22.6, but is driving comfortably within himself. Last year's winner in Australia in the Williams Honda, Keke Rosberg, this year in the Marlboro McLaren with the TAG engine. And what a wonderful race it would be, and what a wonderful finish for a superb career if Rosberg won this race. But with his teammate Alain Prost behind him, is the Finn going to get a signal saying let Prost through? I don't know what form it would take, but it would be very clear to Keke Rosberg. Now, I've just started my stopwatch as Rosberg goes into the chicane, and I'll give you the gap between him and the 2nd place man, Prost.
Yes, and Prost is actually catching Rosberg slightly, and he's just set a new lap record on this lap he's just completed, 22.5 for Alain Prost, and he is catching Rosberg, not very quickly or significantly, but he is just catching him.
There's the confirmation, 1:22.5. That's just 1/10 of a second off Rosberg's lead by Alain Prost. 164.8 kilometres, 102.4 miles an hour, and the race is getting more and more exciting all the time. Nigel Mansell, 3rd position. That's good enough. Has Nelson Piquet, in having that spin, made the mistake that is going to cost him the 1986 World Championship? Very possibly. Alain Prost now coming up to take Andrea de Cesaris as the leader Keke Rosberg, who's got a marvellous rhythm going now. This 37-year-old Finn who lives in Ibiza these days flies his own Learjet all round the world, including home as quickly as he possibly can after each Grand Prix. And when he finishes his Grand Prix career, he's going to be taking up promotional activity associated with motor racing, and knowing what a superb businessman Keke Rosberg is, I'm sure that he will add to his already considerable fortune, made the hard way, because Keke's been driving weekend after weekend all round the world for about well over 20 years. And so you see Alain Prost is carving away at that lap record. There it goes again.
He's also chipped quite a lot into Rosberg's lead when Keke was following those slower cars. So there's Prost in the background, coming towards us now, and he is now only just under 14 seconds behind Keke Rosberg. But bear in mind, he's still got all that traffic to negotiate his way past. Mansell in the position he needs to be to win the World Championship. Third place will do, no matter what Prost can do in front of him. And Piquet is now holding on to him. He's not losing ground anymore behind. So Piquet is the big threat for Nigel Mansell. Piquet doesn't look in a position to win the race and therefore win the championship for himself, but he is in a position to take it away from Nigel Mansell if he gets in front of him.
Alain Prost, third place. Lap 28 out of 82, race order. Keke Rosberg leads. Alain Prost is in second place. Nigel Mansell is third. Piquet is fourth. Senna is fifth. Johansson is sixth. Streff is seventh. Patrese is eighth. Brundle is ninth. And incidentally, the leader has lapped everybody up to Stefan Johansson, who is sixth. And that is after only 27 laps. That's how quick Keke Rosberg is going. But Alain Prost there in second place is certainly going no slower. The gap now between Rosberg and Prost is 13.4 seconds. And Prost is some 9 seconds ahead of Mansell, who is 3 seconds ahead of Piquet, fourth, who is about 25 seconds ahead of Senna, fifth. Johansson is sixth, and everybody up to Johansson has been lapped. Alain Prost, they call him the Professor, and not for nothing.
Absolutely right. He puts a very studious approach to his driving and to his preparation for driving, his mental approach, and also his setting up of the car. He spends probably more energy, much more energy, on getting a good race setup with his car in proportion to how much energy that he spends on qualifying than any other driver in the business. There is Johnny Dumfries. And he's now in 16th place after his spin, and here we can see what it's like from his point of view once again. The race just past the start-finish line. It's its second gear for the S's. Spurted away up to third.
Johnny Dumfries driving his last race for the Lotus Renault team. He doesn't know what's going to happen to him next year. He's naturally hoping to be able to put up a good show in this race, because the best he has been able to do in his first year of Formula One is a 5th place in Hungary and 2 7th places. And I'm not suggesting for one moment that that's anything to be ashamed of. Getting World Championship points in your first year is no mean achievement. Up another gear, down to the right-hander, and Brewery Bend. He's doing about 130 kilometres an hour here.
You can see the oil coming from the exact speed in front of him, getting onto the lens of the camera. It also, of course, gets on to the lens of one's visor. Now, this happens all through the race. Now, some drivers use tear-offs, the little thin perspex strips that they can put on, clip onto the outside of the visor, then when it gets dirty they throw it away. But I personally always prefer to carry a rag, which I can put between my legs where it's easy to get at in the car, so I would polish. You'll also see some drivers using the back of their sleeve, the back of their hand or their overall sleeve to clean the visor as they go along.
We are now on lap 30 in this enthralling race, rather over 1/3 distance, and Keke Rosberg is leading still, but Alain Prost is chipping away at that lead. It's down to 12.8 seconds now. Prost in second place. There is the leader. Keke Rosberg is 8 seconds ahead of Nigel Mansell, who is in third place. More than good enough to ensure his world championship, because Prost has got to get ahead of Rosberg, the leader there, number 2, before he is in a world championship potential winning situation. Rosberg takes Teo Fabi back in the race, and Fabi is in 19th position. And as Prost goes through, we wait for Nigel Mansell. Well, he's gone 7 seconds now, and there's 4 seconds between Mansell and Piquet. So Piquet, who lost that third place to Mansell with his spin, is not making any impression on the Englishman.
Yes, but he's holding him, and I think maybe he has cleaned up his tyres. I think he was in a little bit of trouble with the tyres, but he's cleaned them up because he initially lost ground to Nigel Mansell, but he's regained a little bit of lost ground, although now they seem to have settled down, and there seems to be very little to choose between them in terms of speed. The gap is pretty static. There's Alain Prost. He remembers been having to fight his way through a gaggle of cars. You see the ones all behind him who he's been lapping. Mansell is faced with that problem as well.
And there is Nelson Piquet in fourth position. And isn't it incredible that Sir Keke Rosberg, because he has the equivalent of that honour in his home country, Finland, the ex-computer programmer, one of the best wits in the business, a fantastic businessman, a pilot, the man who's driven for the Wolf team, the Fittipaldi team, the Theodore and the Williams team for 4 years, is coming good for McLaren in his very last race as Nelson Piquet, number 6 double world champion, crosses the line and starts another lap in fourth place, 4 seconds behind his teammate Nigel Mansell. The 2 Williams Honda cars are showing their usual reliability. It was only a mistake of Nelson Piquet's when he hit that patch of oil that lost him the third place that could have been so vital to him. There's Andre de Cesaris, who's been caught again by Nelson Piquet. The gap between Piquet and Mansell is actually increasing. It is nearly 5 seconds now, and Ayrton Senna in 5th place is right out of the running. There are only 4 men effectively in the running at the present moment. Rosberg the leader as Piquet laps de Cesaris. Prost in 2nd place, 15.6 seconds now behind the leader, and certainly making no real impression on him now. In fact, just the reverse. Nigel Mansell, 5 seconds behind Prost, and I'm sure content to stay there as you watch 3rd place man Nelson Piquet, because Piquet and Prost, like other drivers in this race, but by no means all of them, are in radio communication with their pits. They have a small loudspeaker alongside each ear in the helmet. There's Gerhard Berger being passed by Nigel Mansell, and Prost is into the pits. Alain Prost on lap 33 is into the pits for his expected tyre change at about the right time. And this is a bad change by modern standards. Over 17 seconds, Alain Prost, and that is not good. That could be critical. I know we say that's not a good stop. Over 17 seconds to change all 4 tyres and wheels. That's bad. In fact, it's incredible. But by Grand Prix standards, it is not good enough, because the Williams team have done it in under 7 seconds. Nevertheless, Alain Prost, that you look at now on new boots, has rejoined the Australian Grand Prix on lap 33 out of 82 in 4th position.
And some 20 seconds behind Nelson Piquet. So that was an expensive, is Hugh Brockengatter's Zaxby just being pushed into the dead car park. So Prost now has a great deal to do, and that he will be pretty disappointed with that pit stop. That was getting on for 10 seconds longer than it might have been.
Yeah, and it rather explodes all our theories about Prost going out on the harder Bs and hopefully being able to stay out most of the race. There is Keke Rosberg, the race leader, who, if my information was correct, and I'm beginning to doubt it in view of what James said about Prost, is on C compound tyres, which are softer than those of Prost.
Yes, that's correct. He definitely started the race on C's. But it was a difficult decision because, and it's a difficult decision for all the teams, because the track condition was changing between every practice session. So the teams were really left scratching their heads this morning with not enough information about which tyres to run. But Rosberg looks pretty happy at the moment. He's got a 23-second lead over Nigel Mansell, but Nigel Mansell won't be at all bothered about that. His interest is in holding the second or even third place, which will ensure him the championship.
Last year, bright sunshine, clear blue skies, 31-degree temperature. This year at Adelaide, overcast skies, pretty dull light. But so far, and let's keep our fingers crossed, the track is dry. The hint of rain that existed just before the race has disappeared. I think we're going to have a dry race, because although the weather conditions here in Adelaide can change unbelievably quickly, from seemingly in the twinkling of an eye to bright blue sunshine and dry roads to a raging downpour, it doesn't look that sort of a day today to me. And on now, lap 35, Keke Rosberg leads by 25 seconds. Nigel Mansell is in second position, with Piquet third, because of the pit stop of Alain Prost for tyres, who has gone down to fourth position, with Senna fifth and Johansson sixth.
Well, I really have no idea what tyres they put on Prost's car, whether they switched him to C compound tyres then during that pit stop, or whether they kept him on the same A's as Nelson Piquet goes past the Brabham and the Benetton. But whatever they put him on, although he's a long way back now, he is the fastest man on the circuit at the moment, and he just got up to speed pretty quickly.
So there is Nelson Piquet, and of course Nigel Mansell is in a very strong position in World Championship terms now. He's in second place. All he needs to do is finish third or higher, irrespective of where the competition in the form of Piquet and Prost are, to win the championship. Just as a matter of interest, if Prost or Piquet won and Mansell finished in third position, they would have the same number of points, 72, and the championship would actually be decided on a count-back basis by the fact that Nigel Mansell would have a fifth place to his credit that the others did not. That is Ayrton Senna, who is in fifth position, and now everybody up to Senna, who is in fifth place, as you look at Johnny Dumfries, who is in 15th place, has been lapped by Keke Rosberg, the race leader, after 35 laps. Rosberg, Mansell, Piquet, Prost, Senna, Johansson. So it's McLaren, Williams, McLaren, Lotus, Ferrari. And once again, Stefan Johansson is proving the class of the field in the Ferrari team, because Alboreto has long since disappeared from the race. Another dreadful Grand Prix, this time in Australia, for the popular, likeable and extremely talented Italian Michele Alboreto, who last year finished second in the World Championship, and this year is going to be lucky to finish above 9th position. So the race settles. Lap 37. We're getting towards the half-distance mark. Now, out of the race already have gone Piercarlo Ghinzani, Alessandro Nannini with a crash, and I'm happy to tell you that Nannini is perfectly okay. It was a very heavy crash which knocked the front off the car, but left the tub intact. He's okay. Alan Berg in the second Osella is out. Alan Jones is out. Hugh Rotengatter is out. Rosberg there is very definitely and positively in, leading. Number 2, Keke Rosberg, McLaren-TAG. And I wonder if watching this race is John Barnard, who designed this car, which has been one of the most successful Grand Prix cars of all time. It is, I think, in its 4th season now in various forms. An absolutely magnificent design and a superb achievement by Barnard, who has now left the McLaren team and is joining Ferrari and will be starting work in just a few days' time, when his contract finishes at the end of October, to design the Challenger that Ferrari desperately need for 1987. And another rumour, in fact even stronger than the one I've given you in the past, is that Neil Oakley, the man who has designed the very pretty and extremely well-handling Lola, which funnily enough is just in front of Keke Rosberg now in the hands of Patrick Tambay, is joining McLaren as their designer next year. Rumour, that is. Wait for it to be confirmed. Alain Prost, 3rd position. The gap between Prost in 4th place and Piquet in 3rd is 16 seconds. The gap between Piquet and 3rd and Mansell in 2nd is 4 seconds. And Keke Rosberg is continuing his Sunday afternoon drive, making it absolutely effortless from an appearance point of view here at Adelaide, in the lead.
Yes, and he's been slowly but surely extending his lead, and he is some 28 seconds now ahead of Nigel Mansell in 2nd place. Prost is currently the fastest man on the circuit, although Piquet's just put in a scorching lap, which is a new lap record, 22.06, and there it is on caption. So Nelson Piquet's got the bit between his teeth now. And that is Fabi coming into the pits. And there we see Prost. Who's some still 17 seconds behind Nelson Piquet. But Piquet has closed up a little bit on Nigel Mansell.
And as we watch Alain Prost in 4th position, 17 seconds behind Nelson Piquet, looking at the McLaren makes me think and wonder who will be taking the place of race leader Keke Rosberg next season. And with all the rumours saying that it's Stefan Johansson, and with Johansson in the evil handling Ferrari in 6th position, with Senna, Prost, Piquet, Mansell and Rosberg ahead of him, all of them in cars which are generally acknowledged to be greatly superior to the Ferrari, it would certainly seem to confirm the fact that Johansson must be the most capable chap available to McLaren for next year. Nigel Mansell, there he is, 2nd. He will undoubtedly be talking to Patrick Head, who is his race engineer in the Williams team pit and his car's designer. And Patrick Head has been the designer of many World Championship cars for Williams. And Nigel Mansell will know exactly what the score is. Patrick Head, a great tactician as well as a superb designer, will be telling Mansell that he can just continue to go steady as he is. Nigel Mansell won't be half as interested in winning this race as finishing 2nd or 3rd. A win would be nice, because any one of those positions will give him the first World Championship for a British driver since 1976, which was James's year, of course. And so now the gap between Rosberg, the leader, and Mansell in 2nd place is just under half a minute. An enormous cushion for Keke Rosberg. Really all the fin now on his 41st lap in this 82-lap race, which is exactly half distance, has got to do is, by his terms, coast around and make sure that everything is working properly.
Yes, he can afford to nurse, and a new fastest lap now for Nelson Piquet, so the times are really coming down as the fuel load lightens in these cars. Just approaching half distance, and certainly all four of the front men are speeding up.
But especially the man in third position, Nelson Piquet, because he is catching Mansell. You can see that the gap, which was nearly 4 seconds, has been carved right down. And soon we're going to have the position of these two teammates in very equally matched cars, in a situation where both are in contention for the World Championship, fighting each other for the second place that they both need to have in order to try to do something about Keke Rosberg, the leader. And Piquet needs that second place more than Mansell does, because to win the World Championship, Piquet has to win the race. Mansell looks in his left mirror and he sees the sight of the Canon Williams Honda behind him, the silhouette that he knows so well. And now I think we are going to see a classic struggle as they come up to Philippe Streff, the Frenchman, who is in 8th place in his Tyrrell Renault. And Mansell is undoubtedly in a faster car, and with respect to Streff, is a better driver. So if Streff doesn't move over, this is going to give Nelson Piquet in third place, challenging for the championship and needing to get ahead of Nigel Mansell, the chance to close up on the Williams Honda in front of him and be in a position to challenge for second place. Rosberg, by the way, in the lead, has now caught and passed and lapped Ayrton Senna, who is in 5th place. Senna, one of the 5 men who has won a Grand Prix this year. And just let's watch and enjoy Mansell and Piquet fighting for second place.
Yes, this could be a feature of the race, because Piquet and Mansell have not been the best of friends, although they've got things sorted out to a good working relationship now between them. But there's a very powerful rivalry that exists, and Nelson Piquet will be keen to get past Mansell, and that won't hurt Mansell's chances at all for the World Championship. Third place will still do him fine. So I hope he doesn't do anything silly like, which I'm sure he won't, like turning his boost up and getting marginal on fuel. Short squirt and then through the quick right-hander onto the main straight. Now, Piquet's not quite close enough this time. So if anything stretched away a little bit down the straight. And Gerhard Berger has gone into the pits.
Need an enormous amount of self-discipline from Nigel Mansell, of course, not to fight Piquet every inch of the way, because quite apart from wanting to stay ahead anyway, there is the added incitement of wanting to stay ahead of your teammate, particularly when it's Nelson Piquet, who Nigel Mansell has consistently done better than this year. But Piquet is certainly going, he's certainly intending to have second place, and he takes it. And Nigel Mansell didn't fight there. I think, as James has suggested, that Nigel Mansell is using every ounce of his considerable intelligence, acumen and experience, and letting Piquet go through, knowing that if he stays where he is, he's still going to be world champion.
Yes, very sensible driving by Mansell, exactly the right thing. No point in him fighting Piquet. And there's Berger's car being pushed away, so that's another retirement. Nelson Piquet has a very long way to do anything about Keke Rosberg. Keke Rosberg is now some 35 seconds or so clear. Prost is now only 12 seconds behind Mansell. So he's catching, but not very quickly. That's Andrea de Cesaris, parked off the road. Can't quite see how he got there.
Well, the mice are getting at the machinery in no mean fashion now. Ginzani out, Nannini out, Berg out, Jones out, Rotengetter out, Berger out, De Cesaris out. Everybody now has been lapped by Keke Rosberg up to Alain Prost, who is in 4th position because Ayrton Senna, who is 5th, has been lapped. And on lap 45, the race order is Keke Rosberg leading by 36 seconds from Nelson Piquet. There is Rosberg. Mansell just a whisker behind Piquet, having let the Brazilian through in order to maintain his hold on the World Championship without getting... And Senna's out! Ayrton Senna finishes the 1986 season, and the last race he's going to be driving in, driven by a Renault engine, unfortunately by retiring with what looked like either engine or gearbox trouble from the way he got round the back and had a look. So Ayrton Senna, a double winner of 1986 in Spain and Detroit, 4th in the World Championship, is going to finish 4th in the World Championship, because although Rosberg, the race leader, is going to add 9 points to his total if he finishes where he is now, and is in 5th place in the championship, it's not going to be enough to close the gap on Senna, let alone pass him.
Well, let's just interrupt Murray Walker from London just a moment to get the reaction on the race so far from Frank Williams. And that little Piquet Mansell battle for 2nd place didn't do a great deal for your nerves, I don't suppose, Frank.
No, I think that Nigel is perhaps trying to run the whole race without changing. When Nelson went by him a moment ago, he didn't fight at all, as James said. He is, however, able to stay just behind Nelson, consequently. And I would say that, having spoken to Patrick Head earlier today when he thought it may not be necessary to change tyres at all, maybe Nigel is counting on that and is therefore presently trying to save those tyres.
You're trying as closely as possible to monitor the way Nigel's car is performing. Any moments of doubt? You were a little concerned in the early laps.
Well, certainly a bit of a fright in the first few corners of the first lap. He dropped a lot of ground. And I thought, oh dear, he's got a problem. But he picked up speed, didn't lose any more ground worth talking about after that.
Right, if tyres are okay and you don't have to come in, then fuel becomes the problem. What are your concerns there?
Well, we are marginal on fuel, but the drivers are clever enough to look at their fuel meter and adjust their turbo boost accordingly. I don't think we'll run out of fuel, and I think if they have to drop the boost, it's a very tight circuit where they can't always use maximum power because of excessive wheel spin. It may not be an important feature, in fact.
But you would say things looking good for Nigel at the moment?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. It's an awful long way to go. Very worried about it.
OK, we'll rejoin Murray Walker and James Hunt.
Lap 47. And just to remind you of something I said at the beginning of the race, I was told by someone who should know that the Williams team are very concerned about fuel consumption. They may just have been telling me that on a sandbagging basis, of course, and they're not concerned at all, but I suspect they are. And since this race is a 2-hour... And there's a spin for Patrick Tambay, the Frenchman, who's recovered in a masterly way and drives on. And he's now actually in the pits, is Tambay. There he is. Accelerates away. We're with him. We're exiting the pit lane now. This is Patrick Tambay's car that you are sitting in as the Frenchman notches up a gear and goes towards the chicane.
It's a rather dramatic weekend, has Patrick Tambay. He's had several spins. He had a very big shunt on Friday, and he's really been, for his normally smooth and sensible style, he's been really quite ragged. Prost is under 5 seconds behind the Piquet Mansell pair and catching him.
Nelson Piquet. Second place, gap to race leader Alain Prost, 36 seconds. Gap to third place man, you can see for yourself. Nigel Mansell, a lot of people have said to me they have been absolutely amazed by how much he has improved this year, even on his double race winning form of 1985. And I was talking to Peter Collins, who is a great personal friend of Nigel Mansell, and whose life was saved by Nigel Mansell on one occasion when Peter was drowning in the surf in Rio de Janeiro, and Nigel Mansell plunged in to save him, about Mansell, and he said they are all wrong. I have never had any doubts about the ability of Nigel Mansell. He is now in a team and in an atmosphere and in an environment with equipment that will allow him to demonstrate just how really good he is. And my goodness, he's doing so. And demonstrating in this, his 90th Grand Prix, what an excellent tactical brain he's got and what superb self-control he has got. Nigel Mansell, informed every inch of the way by Patrick Head through radio from the pits, knows that if he just quotes, jogs, close quotes, at a mere lap speed of about 108 miles an hour or so average around this circuit, and keeps Nelson Piquet in sight, with Keke Rosberg still leading the race, he is guaranteed the World Championship, the fame, the prestige, and the very, very considerable fortune that will accompany it, and how richly it will have been deserved. So you watch now and enjoy the classic sight of two of the masters of modern Grand Prix racing. Double world champion Nelson Piquet, world champion designate Nigel Mansell in second and third places. And behind them, with Keke Rosberg maintaining that lead of about 36, 37 seconds, it's Alain Prost in fourth position, and he is 9 seconds behind Mansell. Stefan Johansson is fifth and has been lapped by number 2 there, the race leader, Keke Rosberg. Riccardo Patrese has superbly driven the unwieldy Brabham up into 6th position and is in the points. Philippe Streff for Ken Tyrrell's Renault Power team is in 7th place, followed by his teammate Martin Brundle, who is 8th. Derek Warwick in the second Brabham is 9th. And in 10th position is Rene Arnoux, 2 laps behind the leader. Johnny Dumfries is in 11th place. Philippe Alliot is 12th. Thierry Boutsen is in 13th place. Jonathan Palmer in the Zach Speed is 14th. Christian Danner is 15th. And then there's, that's it, virtually 16 or 17 drivers left in the race effectively in this FIA Fédération Internationale Automobile World Championship race, the last one of the series of 1986. The FIA, the very strong governing body, headed by the controversial Jean-Marie Balestre, who is here in Australia, amongst the many personalities who include Mr. Honda himself, the man who started the empire. And look what he's seen. What a wonderful sight for him. And for Frank Williams in London. Piquet second, Mansell third. The Williams team has already very convincingly won the Constructors' World Championship. The only target that they have, apart from the Drivers' Championship, which looks to be in Mansell's hands, is to win the Constructors' Championship, highest ever points, which are held by McLaren with 143.5 points in 1984. Williams have 135, and they are now on target for another 10 points if Piquet and Mansell finish second and third, and they would complete the triple, as it were, by winning the Constructors' Championship by a record margin.
Well, there's another new lap record. Everybody's times are steadily coming down. Alain Prost this time, and he is probably the fastest man on the circuit, but he did lose a fair bit of time in traffic just now, lapping slower cars, and in fact he's dropped to 8 seconds now behind the Williams pair.
You probably noticed those twin spirals of something coming up from the rear wing of the Williams Honda of Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell behind him. That is a visual demonstration of how the wings are really working in increasing the downforce on the tyres and maximising the grip on the ground. Now, as Piquet and Mansell went past me, and as they come towards us, I looked very carefully at their Goodyear tyres, which seemed to me in good shape. And Riccardo Patrese is now coming up with a wet sail, because the Italian in the Brabham has passed Stefan Johansson into 5th position. Race order, lap 52 with 30 to go, including the one they're on. Keke Rosberg, that comfortable, to put it mildly, half a minute ahead of Nelson Piquet in 2nd place, who is a visual gap ahead of Nigel Mansell 3rd. Prost 4th, Patrese 5th and has been lapped. Johansson 6th, Streff 7th, Brundle 8th, Warwick 9th and Johnny Dumfries in 11th place.
Yes, well, Piquet and Mansell have closed the gap to Keke Rosberg a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that that would be because Rosberg doesn't need to be in a hurry. He's got still just on half a minute in hand, and he will no doubt be easing up a little bit to look after the machinery and to conserve fuel.
James, since things are looking pretty static at the moment, let's just think of one or two hypotheses. Shall we remember that for one reason or another, either a faulty fuel readout or a heavy right foot, Keke Rosberg has on occasions in the past in the McLaren team run out of fuel?
Yes, he has. He did at the beginning of the season from heavy right foot troubles, but and then he did once later at Hockenheim in the German Grand Prix when both McLarens ran out on the last lap, and that was quite clearly confirmed by the team to have been a faulty fuel readout. No, he did at the beginning of the season. He wasn't quite used to the car, but as soon as he got the hang of it, he in fairness hasn't been guilty of over right footing it again. But I'm pretty confident McLarens have got their fuel readout meter back working accurately now. And there you see Prost in the background, just coming onto the straight as the two Williamses go into the braking area. A little puff of smoke there off the right front tyre from Nigel's brakes. He just locked the right front wheel, but that is no problem.
And 8 seconds is the gap between Nigel Mansell in his comfortable World Championship winning, if he stays there, position, and number 1 reigning world champion Alain Prost fighting hard to get back onto terms. The cool, clear thinking, tactical Alain Prost, who more than anybody else seems to be able to exert the most rigid discipline on himself in terms of watching his fuel counter. I remember he lost victory in the San Marino Grand Prix, having watched his fuel counter and watched everybody else running out of fuel in front of him and driving at the speed he knew would enable him to finish the race, only bitterly to lose victory, because when his car was weighed, it was a mere 2 kilograms underweight. And Prost is speeding up, 1:21.526, but that's not all that much difference between the times of Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell, 2nd and 3rd. Prost now coming up to our camera car, Patrick Tambay, who waves him past. So there is the Frenchman. And it's lap 55. We've still got the question of whether the Williams cars are going to come in for tyres, whether the Williams cars are, in fact, going to be affected by fuel consumption problems, and that's Johnny Dumfries.
And Prost, meanwhile, has just reduced the lap record yet again to some 21.002, so pretty much 1:21 dead. And Johnny Dumfries working away at the wheel. Remember, by this stage of the race, the drivers are starting to get pretty tired, but they're not allowed to acknowledge the pain and discomfort. You've got to keep going, obviously. And that's the nicest part of the circuit at this, for drivers at this stage of the race. You get a nice little rest on the straight, and then it's back to flat-out busyness again.
What we haven't done so far during this race is to heap praise onto the organisers and administrators of this second Australian Grand Prix in Adelaide. Last year, those of us who follow the Grand Prix circuits all over the world came to Australia wondering what we were going to see, wondering whether the fact that it was on the other side of the world was going to have made things difficult for them to organise a Grand Prix to the very high standards required by the FIA. We needn't have worried. They won the award for the best Grand Prix of the year. They won the award for the best television coverage of the year, and they richly deserved both. They didn't rest on their laurels. This year, when we came back, they said, we have tried to improve everything, like seating for the spectators, and just look at it there. Rows and rows of seats for the thousands and thousands of spectators. There was a bump on the Brabham Straight, which you're looking at now, and the whole thing was resurfaced. Nothing was left to chance. Any small detail that was less than perfect was corrected. And talking about less than perfection, look at Christian Danner in the arrows, who has clearly blown a turbo of his BMW engine. And Alain Prost is 4.3 seconds behind Nigel Mansell, and will have to do better if he's to catch the Englishman. And Keke Rosberg there in the lead could hardly be doing better, because he's still half a minute in the lead.
Yes, the Williams has reduced the gap a little bit, and Rosberg showed that he had plenty in hand, because he was able to respond and speed up, and he's maintaining that gap just under the half-minute. Prost, meanwhile, is slowly chipping away at the two Williamses, but really isn't making a very fast impression on them. And Rosberg really looks very comfortable there in front.
Coming towards us, Teo Fabi, followed by Alio, Philippe, I think it's René Arnoux. It's very difficult to tell them apart. Identical cars, it's Alio. And just watch the way that Rosberg bides his time and then just motors past very quick men. And Philippe Alio, who has been translated upwards, as it were, promoted from Formula 3000 after the unfortunate crash that his teammate Jacques Lafitte, who finished second here last year, had in the British Grand Prix.
And there, Prost got right up to Nigel Mansell. So, after a fairly long, hard chase, Prost is getting into position now to start challenging. Piquet, of course, only just a second or so in front of Nigel. So we've now got a three-cornered fight, basically for second place, or two-cornered if you agree that, of course, Nigel Mansell is particularly fighting for second, but he won't really want Prost to go past, because if Prost can get past both Williamses, that will put Nigel down into fourth place, and if Rosberg then hands his lead over to Prost, he could nick the championship. I'm sure Nigel will be well aware of this, so he would be, in my opinion, well advised at this stage to fight for that third place and defend it as best he possibly can.
But the thing that, I make no bones about it, mystifies me is the way the Williams cars are going on and on without coming in to change tyres, if indeed they are on the C compound, which are the softest race tyres. There's not a lot of tyre wear here, but I would be mildly surprised if they could both go through the full race distance without a tyre change. But that's soon going to be of academic interest, because, as you can see, Prost is catching Nigel Mansell, who is third.
Yes, the thing is, although it normally works that the softer the compound, the more the wear and the less durable it goes, it doesn't always follow that way, and this is obviously the case here, that for some reason it may be that the cars are sliding more on the Bs and therefore they overheated more. You do get strange reversals, and it would seem that Prost has hurt his chances in this race, although he's certainly fighting hard, because it looks like he chose the wrong tyre.
Well, now, if Prost can get ahead of Mansell, he will be within sight of Piquet, who is second. And although he will then be half a minute behind Keke Rosberg, there would be no doubt at all about the fact that a signal would go out from Keke Rosberg's race engineer, Steve Nicol, to say cool it and let Prost through to win the championship. And that could be absolutely riveting. We're watching this race, as is appropriate for Adelaide, really come alive.
And Nigel Mansell has obviously agreed with what I suggested just now, because and that is to defend that third place as hard as he can, because he's speeded up and he's just got very close in terms of time to Prost's new lap record. It's only a tenth slower than that, so he's shown that he can respond and is prepared to respond. So Prost is going to have a hard fight to get past.
And just savour this, the three championship contenders, Nigel Mansell in the lead in the championship, Alain Prost second in the championship, Nelson Piquet third in the championship, are together in second, third and fourth places. Piquet, Mansell, Prost. Ahead of them, Keke Rosberg. If anything happened to Keke Rosberg, the championship would be down to these three men, except that, of course, Nigel Mansell could still finish third and win the championship. What an absolutely enthralling situation. And Alain Prost speeding up all the time. He's still got the fastest lap, 1 minute 21 seconds, almost exactly, just 0.02 of a second over. And now the professor has in front of him the Englishman engineer, Nigel Mansell. Look down on it. There is the gap as they go down the fastest part of the course, the Brabham Straight, into racetrack hairpin, first gear. Now into the sweeping left-hander at Paddock Turn. That's where Patrick Torbay went off with the grass on the left as they enter Victoria Racecourse on this newly constructed piece of road. All the rest is on the city streets or environs of Adelaide itself. Down to the second slowest corner, Foster's hairpin, first gear. And this is the completion of lap 60 in this 82-lap race. We've still got 22 laps of pure enjoyment left.
Yes, and Prost has got to get close to Mansell. He's got to try and get closer and closer before they take the quick corner onto the main straight. He's got to really be within a couple of car lengths, and it may just be that the Ligier will help him get that close. And Renier knew that was, behaving very politely, moves right out of the way and lets the battle go past him unmolested. Now here, down the straight, now Prost at this corner where Piquet is just going to the fast lick. Prost wants to be very close. I wonder if that's Ayrton Senna having his sandwiches. Work done for the day, he looked very relaxed. In a pre-race TV interview, they asked Ayrton Senna if he couldn't win the race, who would he like to see win the race? He rather sensibly said he really couldn't give a stuff. Prost very, very close. I wonder if Mansell is going to be prepared to use that boost switch in the car to defend the place. I should think this is a stage where he ought to.
You're watching the battle for the World Championship, in effect, because if Prost can get past Mansell, he will then be within striking distance of Piquet. If he can get past Piquet, he may well have it made if team orders are going to work. Johansson, by the way, we're concentrating on the battle for this third place between Mansell and Prost, but the race order now is still Rosberg. But the gap between Rosberg and Piquet is coming down now. The Brazilian is charging in the same way that, there he is, in the same way that Mansell and Prost are. The gap, which was 30 seconds, has now come down to 22 seconds between Piquet and Rosberg, the leader, with Prost forcing Mansell very hard indeed. Mansell third, Prost fourth, you see them both. Johansson has lost his fifth place again to Riccardo Patrese. Great scrap going on between the Ferrari of Johansson and the Brabham of Patrese. And then in seventh position, it is Philippe Streff ahead of his teammate Martin Brundle. And out of the right-hander they come together. Is this going to be Prost's chance?
Tremendous stuff. Now Nigel's driving very sensibly. He's keeping it absolutely smooth. And quite rightly making it as difficult as he possibly can. So far, Prost has not looked like he's had any obvious chance of overtaking, but he's now right on his tail. This is the closest he's been. So this is where Mansell's got to keep really cool, because it's more important to be smooth than to be fast at this stage, because a mistake, getting a corner wrong, of course, will allow, if he's a bit slow out of a corner, that gives Prost the chance to swoop past. So he just wants to be smooth.
Rosberg out! Keke Rosberg is out of the Australian Grand Prix. If this isn't a sensation, I would like to know what is. The man who won last year has retired in the lead. He must be bitterly disappointed, and now the World Championship is indeed wide open. There's the reason. Look at the flapping right rear Goodyear on Keke Rosberg's McLaren. A smashed tyre, and out of the race goes the Finn.
And that means that Nigel Mansell only has to finish now to be world champion. That has just about good. And as we were watching that, Prost has got past Mansell there. You just saw him going around the hairpin in the background. There is Nelson Piquet. So Piquet leads the race, but third place is good enough for Mansell. Mansell can now afford to slow right down and just finish. He is miles ahead of Stefan Johansson, who's in fourth place. So he really doesn't need to hurry.
Yeah, and a word of consolation, commiseration, sympathy, and all the other appropriate words for Keke Rosberg. He had driven an immaculate last race for the McLaren team, last race in his Grand Prix career, leading by half a minute, only to have victory snatched from his hands, just as Niki Lauda did last year in the McLaren. What bitter, bitter disappointment for him. He may have been prepared to move over. And look at that! Out that, and colossally, that's Mansell. That is Nigel Mansell, and the car absolutely shattered. He's fighting for control, and you can see what's happened. Mansell is out of the race. Now, this could change and will change the World Championship.
What an absolute tragedy for Mansell. Obviously, the tyres went at almost the same time as Keke Rosberg, so there's a wear problem. Piquet must be made aware of that by radio, because it means he, with his tyres, will be here. We're going to see what happened again, and that's an absolute tragedy, because that means that poor Mansell, that is terrible at the last moment, because well, it could still happen to Nelson Piquet. That was pretty dramatic, and Mansell did pretty well to hold on to the car and keep it straight then. So Nelson Piquet now leads, and leads with World Championship points if he can finish in this situation, but he's got Prost right behind him. So the World Championship is suddenly being battled out by these two.
Now let's clarify things with bitter disappointment, first of all, for Keke Rosberg. Now for Nigel Mansell. Nigel Mansell retains 70 World Championship points. If either Alain Prost or Nelson Piquet win this race, they will have 72 points and will take the championship. But at the present moment, Nelson Piquet is in a World Championship and race-winning situation and would score 72 points, and into the pits goes the Williams.
And I wouldn't be at all surprised if his team didn't call him in, because they will have seen on a TV monitor that two people have lost these tyres. Nelson was running the same tyres, and so Prost is now a favourite to win the World Championship. If he can hold on, I don't remember that Prost has already changed tyres quite a long time ago, So Prost now leads the Australian Grand Prix and, at the moment, the World Championship on points if he can hold on. So Prost can afford to slow down and look after those tyres. You may or may not have seen what happened to Mansell in his mirror. I expect he did. Well, certainly from a safety point of view, I'm sure that was the right thing to do, to call Piquet in. But it stops. It really hurts his chances to win the championship.
If you are in Britain, do not get up and go on, put on the kettle. If you are in Australia, do not open another can of Foster's, because you have now got between lap 66 and lap 82 to watch what I believe is going to be a classic struggle between two of the four top men in Grand Prix racing this year. Now Alain Prost leads the Australian Grand Prix. #1 is in a position to achieve the first back-to-back World Championship, 2 successive years, for a very long time. And I'm trying to remember when it last was, and I seem to remember the name of Sir Jack Brabham being involved. 1959 and 1960 is the answer. Alain Prost, the professor, the cool tactician, had changed his tyres a long time ago. That's Johnny Dumfries in the pits, just for the record, with his teammate Ayrton Senna already out of the race. Now Nelson Piquet is on a new set of rubber, and the gap between Alain Prost in the lead and Nelson Piquet in second position is some 15 seconds as you watch the professor. The man who lives in Saint-Croix in Switzerland, 13 years experience, and what a lot of Grand Prix experience, 105 Grand Prix.
Wow, all this excitement has been going on. Moved Martin Brundle up into 4th place, and his teammate Philippe Streff is in 3rd place, so the Tyrrells are having a very good day. Alain Prost, immediately that Piquet went into the pits, reduced his pace a little bit. Of course, he doesn't need to hurry for the moment, but he'll need to keep an eye on Nelson Piquet, because, of course, Piquet's on fresher rubber and is liable to be quicker.
Lap 66. Well, what a race. Alain Prost now leading, and he's leading Nelson Piquet by 16.8. Nearly 17 seconds. Piquet has got to drive the race of his superb Grand Prix racing life. He's got to keep carving away, and there are, what, 14 or 15 laps. The Australian Grand Prix is on lap 68. The race order is Prost, Piquet 18 seconds behind, Streff in 3rd position, and Brundle 4th. So, both the Tyrrells coming good at the end of the year. Rich reward for Ken Tyrrell, who, with Data General sponsorship, has got his team act well and truly together again, is walking around the pit lane looking pretty pleased, and I suspect, therefore, has got his engine arrangements made for next year, because he's losing the Renault engines that he has this year on account of the fact that Renault are retiring. But as you see, we now have 2 British drivers in the top 6 places for viewers in Britain. Martin Brundle in 4th place. Johnny Dumfries in his last Grand Prix for the Lotus Renault team, desperately needing to prove his class in order to get a drive for next year, as his place is being taken by the Japanese driver Satoru Nakajima next year, in 6th position and on a World Championship point. And as you see, only 2 cars are on the same lap. And this could actually improve Prost's championship chances, because, I say again, the information I was given was that the Williams cars were a bit marginal on fuel consumption here. The McLarens are usually better on fuel consumption, or certainly were in the opening half of the season. And there is Alain Prost coming through to complete his 69th lap. 82-lap race. Prost, Piquet, Streff, Brundle, Johansson, Dumfries. Only Piquet has not been lapped.
That's right. And Prost, as eased up a bit, and I think he can respond if he needs to. Piquet, now that he's got his tyres hot, has started to close, but only very, very slightly. Prost completing 69 laps, and Prost has gone even quicker. He's responded. He's yes, and another new lap record. Just as I said he was slowing up, he's gone and put in a new lap record. And no, he hasn't, as Piquet's gone even quicker. So they're both going very quickly indeed. But it was only a matter of 300ths difference in quicker that Piquet went.
Yes, I did a visual check with my own stopwatch there, 18.4 seconds, which I'm glad to say is confirmed by the nearest to 1,000th of a second electronic equipment, which gives exactly the same gap. So Alain Prost now on target for his second World Championship in 2 years.
And there is Martin Brundle. He's now pretty close to Philip Streff. There is Streff in front of him. So will we see Brundle coming up and having a fight and trying to snatch third place from his own teammate?
Martin Brundle's best finish ever was in Detroit, when he finished in second place in his first year for the Tyrrell team, having finished his first Grand Prix in 5th place in Brazil. And the enormously likeable Englishman, who comes from South Wootton, which is near King's Lynn, is on his way for 964 points. Philippe Streff coming good, because he finished in 3rd position last year here in Adelaide, but in a different car. Last year he was in the Ligier team. This year he's driving for the popular Ken Tyrrell. And Ken's got 2 cars in the top 4. And since the division of the prize fund, which is organised by FISA and FOCA together, is obviously in proportion to the finishing order, it looks as though Ken Tyrrell is going to end the season in the money. Yeah, I've just remembered the fact that Philippe Streff savaged Jacques Lafitte on the last lap last year, and actually finished his race on 3 wheels as a result of trying just a little bit too hard for second place. And let's hope that doesn't happen between the 2 Tyrrell cars. Now we are on lap 71 of this race, which has seen Mansell go out most dramatically and tragically. Keke Rosberg go out equally dramatically and tragically. Keke Rosberg in the lead, Mansell in the World Championship lead in this FIA World Championship race here in Australia, with Christian Danner having retired, Senna, one of the hot favourites, having retired. So has De Cesaris, Berger, Rodengatter, Alan Jones, hoping so much to do well in his home country in his last Grand Prix of the year, and for the team, I suspect. And there is a big cloud hanging over the Lola Haas team, who are rumoured to be going to be told their fortunes tonight after this race finishes, about what happens next year. Alan Berg is out, Nannini is out, Ginzani is out. Here is the hero of the hour at the moment, Alain Prost, leading now increasingly comfortably, because he's increased the gap over his rival Nelson Piquet for the World Championship. This is Johansson on the curb, and he grounds it, scrapes along the flat bottom, regains the ground with all 4 wheels. It's a good thing he didn't stop there, because he would have lost drive, but he's back on the circuit in 5th place.
Yes, you got a jolly hot bottom doing that, because you sit on the floor of the car, and would have been scraping along right underneath him, and it creates a lot of heat. So Prost is still pushing it along pretty quickly. But what a tragedy for Nigel Mansell. Driven so well all season. There is Nelson Piquet in 2nd place. Mansell had by and large outdriven Nelson Piquet, and Piquet, I think, is easing up, because or maybe he was a little bit slower then, lapping the Zach speed, but the gap now is over 21 seconds.
it could well be that Nelson Piquet is having to ease up. I'm sure the fighting Brazilian doesn't want to, but the fact remains that the gap has increased from 18 to 19 to 20 to 21 seconds between himself and race leader Alain Prost, and it could well be because the Brazilian, on advice by radio from his pit, is just having to take it easy on account of the fact that the fuel may be getting low. 2-hour race, the race has been going to 1 hour and 45 minutes, and there is the unfortunate Nigel Mansell, bathed in sweat, his face a mask of tragedy, seeing his World Championship chances slipping away, with the likelihood, and I emphasise the likelihood, of Alain Prost finishing with 72 points ahead of Nigel Mansell, who would be on 70 points, and Nelson Piquet, if he finishes where he is now, on 69 points. Little consolation to Nigel Mansell to know that the prize, just having eluded his grasp, he would still finish in second place in the World Championship, because of course what you want to do is win. And here is the likely winner. And I'm sure the McLaren team, with the likelihood, yes, the very real likelihood of retaining their highest ever points in the Constructors' Championship, will be grimly relishing the fact that, notwithstanding the loss of the man who designed the car, John Barnard, they have succeeded in keeping his design and this car in a race-winning and World Championship-winning state. Thanks particularly to Tim Wright and Steve Nicol, the two race engineers. Tim Wright for Alain Prost there, Steve Nicol for Keke Rosberg, and it was no fault of Steve Nicol's that Rosberg's car went out of the race with that blown tyre. This is lap 75 in an Australian Grand Prix which has been full of interest, excitement and incident all the way. There is the second place man, Nelson Piquet. The gap now 22.2 seconds. Only Prost and Piquet are on the same lap. Philippe, Streff and Brundle are separated by 0.4 of a second in third and fourth places. Johansson is fifth, Dumfries is sixth, Jonathan Palmer, the other English driver, is in 10th place.
Yes, and I really think that Prost ought to try and ease up as soon as possible. He's got a comfortable cushion in hand, but he must be aware of the potential tyre problem. He's also, of course, got to save fuel. But above all, I think he should look after those tyres. Of course, even if he's on the same compound, have not gone as far as and won't have to have gone as far as Mansell and Rosberg, the two people who had trouble. So if there's consistency in the production of the tyres, which there is pretty good, it is pretty good these days, he should be all right, but he shouldn't be taking any chances.
This Adelaide Grand Prix, the second Australian World Championship Grand Prix, and the success of it is down to all sorts of people, but if I may single out two who've made this FIA World Championship race the resounding success for the second year that it is, I would say they are Mal Hemmerling and Bob Barnard. Mal Hemmerling, who has masterminded the organisation and administration. Bob Barnard, who has done such a superb job on the course.
Yes, I would like to add my congratulations to them both and to everybody who's worked on this race, because it really has been marvellously done. Nothing is too much trouble for them. For example, we had a huge amount of rain all this week, resulting in a lot of mud in the car parks and paddocks and around, so they just moved tons and tons, lorry load after lorry load, of wood shavings and chippings into the circuit, and they actually managed to conquer the mud problem. It was a truly fantastic effort, and that's just typical of everything that they do. Whatever it is, no matter how much trouble it is, they're always prepared to do it. So Prost still lapping in the 121, so he's not hanging around. must be pretty excited, but of course not allowing himself to get excited. He's got a job to do and a job to finish first. But if he can hang on to the end of the race, he will have achieved a feat that many people and many great drivers have tried for many years, but not since 1959 and 1960 has any driver won the championship 2 years running. And that's would be a fantastic feat by Prost and by the McLaren team to have provided him with the equipment.
What an incredible record this 31-year-old man has. He started his Grand Prix career with McLaren in 1980, and he actually finished 5th and in the World Championship points in his very first Grand Prix. Then he joined Renault, and in 1981 finished 5th in the World Championship. He finished 4th in 1982. In 1983, he lost the World Championship to Nelson Piquet on the very last race of the year in South Africa. In 1984, he lost the World Championship to his teammate Niki Lauda at the very last race of the year in Portugal. Last year, he really made sure of things by winning the World Championship, and he is now, locking up his right front a bit there, he is now on the way to doing, as James has just said, the first back-to-back World Championship since Sir Jack Brabham in 1959-60, and how appropriate it is that the great Australian record should be matched by Alain Prost. Potentially, he still has to finish here in Australia. There is the only man who can challenge him, and one or other of them must win the championship, that being number 6 Nelson Piquet, except in the unlikely event of both of them failing to finish, because we are now on lap 78. There are only 4 laps to go at the end of this one. There are the Team Haas very despondent mechanics, because their race is run, and now they are wondering about their future, about which they are to be informed, I believe, by race boss Tyler Alexander at the end of the day. Nelson Piquet, though, has no such worries in the Williams team, as is Nigel Mansell next year. Those are the positions after 77 laps. We are on the 78th lap. Alain Prost is maintaining the gap of 20 seconds over Nelson Piquet that you are looking at. Streff, Brundle and Johansson in 3rd, 4th and 5th places are on the same lap. But now Martin Brundle has dropped back a bit from Philippe Streff, who looks to me as though he's going to be pretty sure of 3rd position, provided he keeps going as he is now. Stefan Johansson is 5th. Johnny Dumfries is still 6th and in the World Championship points in his last race for Lotus.
Well, Nelson Piquet certainly hasn't given up yet. He's just gone very, very close to his own lap record, and so he's still motoring on at full speed, and that would be more to put pressure on Prost, to pressurize Prost's machinery rather than any hope of catching him. But of course it's important that he should make Prost work for it because of the potential tyre problem, because of any potential fuel problem should there be one. So Piquet is certainly doing the right thing. He's got to keep pushing.
Well, let's just quickly, while we're watching Philippe Streff there in 3rd position, run through the reasons for the retirement so far. Michele Alboreto went out on the very first lap with an accident problem. As far as I know, he's perfectly all right. Ginzani was transmission. Nannini was that accident we saw. He's okay. Torbay was transmission. Jones was engine. Rotengatter was suspension. Berger was clutch. I don't know why De Cesaris went out, but he did. Senna had engine trouble, as did Christian Danner. Thierry Boutsen had some sort of problem that I haven't been able to identify. You know perfectly well what happened to Rosberg and Mansell. The tyre changes were left too late, and Derek Warwick has gone out with brake problems. And now we are on lap 80 with 2 laps to go at the end of this one, and the possibility of a historic situation for Alain Prost.
Yes, and as we speak, Prost has finally decided to slow it right down. So he is just trying to get his machine to the line with as little strain on it now as possible. Dumfries in 6th place, and bit of break up from his car camera then, but that was what we hoped it was looking like from his point of view. There he goes. And he'll be pretty pleased with a World Championship point.
Yes, he'll be delighted with the World Championship point, because it will confirm the view of many of us that this young Scot, who has very much been number 2 in the Lotus Renault team to the brilliant Ayrton Senna this year, fully deserves, richly deserves, a drive in Grand Prix racing next year. And there are going to be a lot of drivers chasing seats. There's Streff, there's Brundle, and behind Martin Brundle, who is in 5th place, is Stefan Johansson. So the battle for 3rd, 4th and 5th is getting pretty close indeed. Johansson is catching Brundle, who is 4th. Brundle is not so far behind Streff, who is 3rd. Now, there you see them. There's Streff taking the racetrack hairpin. There is Martin Brundle, and just behind him is the Ferrari of Stefan Johansson. 3rd, 4th and 5th. 1st and 2nd look to be settled, provided Prost has no problems and Piquet has no problems. Dumfries, who is with them, has been lapped. He is in 6th position. So you're actually looking at the 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th cars together on the circuit.
And there is Alain Prost, just starting his last lap. So Prost can virtually coast around the circuit. He's got a comfortable lead of 11 seconds now. He's slowed it right down. He's 11 seconds in front of Nelson Piquet. And bitter luck and bitter disappointment for Nigel Mansell, who was doing everything right to win the World Championship, and then he had his tyre explode on him, as did the man who made the running for most of the race, Keke Rosberg. But you've got to hand it to Alain Prost. He does deserve this title. He's driven steadily, thoughtfully. He drove in a marvellous race today, never panicked, and just kept on his usual relentless coming through, and a tremendous effort also by the McLaren team. It's been a wonderful Foster's Australian Grand Prix. I've enjoyed the sponsor's product plentifully, and
Alain Prost is virtually within sight of his 25th Grand Prix, his 2nd World Championship. An absolutely superb achievement. You have seen the crowd rising to this popular little Frenchman, who has demonstrated yet again that he's the driver of the day, and he takes the checkered flag. He wins the Australian Grand Prix. He wins the World Championship of 1986. Absolute euphoria in the McLaren pit, and Keke and Alain Prost stops immediately. I wonder if that means he was so low on fuel that he had to stop. Look at him, he can hardly believe it himself. Alain Prost, the quiet, softly spoken Frenchman, receiving the plaudits of the crowd, and my goodness, they deserve. But let us not forget, in the joy of the occasion for this victory for Alain Prost, the bitter cup of Nigel Mansell, who has had the World Championship dashed from his hands. That's Tim Wright in the glasses, Alain Prost, race engineer. Let us not forget the bitter disappointment for Keke Rosberg, who might well have won the race. And let us too sympathise with Nelson Piquet, who failed to win the World Championship for the 3rd time. Now, that means to say that Alain Prost goes down in history as having won the World Championship 2 years in succession, and Nelson Piquet has finished in 2nd position. Stefan Johansson has taken 3rd place, an incredible achievement on the last lap. Stefan Johansson not only got past Martin Brundle, who's coasting in and going across the line out of fuel, but he also got ahead of Philippe Streff. There is Martin Brundle. He has stopped just over the line, and he's run out of fuel. Well, the Australian Grand Prix is full of drama, excitement and incident right to the end. There is Philippe Streff. Fini, he says. Mon auto est fini. The race is over, the car has stopped, And now, subject to official confirmation, no doubt about the fact that the winner is Alain Prost, who has won the World Championship with a total of 72 points to the unfortunate Nigel Mansell's 70 and Nelson Piquet's 79. So Prost wins the race and the championship. Here is Stefan Johansson coming home in third position. Nigel Mansell finishes second in the championship but not in the race. Piquet finishes second in the race and third in the championship. Stefan Johansson in his last race, and there he is for Ferrari, finishes it with a flourish and underlines his claim for the second seat in the McLaren team as a dejected Philippe Streff walks home. Stefan Johansson third. Martin Brundle in fourth place, who coasted across the line, which his teammate Philippe Streff, who was ahead of him, did not do. So Martin Brundle finishes in the points in fourth place. Ken Tyrrell gets the fifth place with Streff, and Johnny Dumfries finishes in the Lotus Renault in sixth place. And just look a little Alain Prost, he's full of chat, and he may well be. Up now to the podium, and what an enormous round of applause he's going to get, because this Australian crowd is enthusiastic. I won't say like no other. It's a long way home for poor Philippe Streff. Plod, plod, plod. And he knows that he has lost a place in the process to Martin Brundle. But back upstairs, as it were, the Prime Minister of Australia, Bob Hawke, is here. And over our commentary box goes that tremendously powerful and enormously noisy and truly beautiful F111, which has been thrilling us before the race, and does a victory blast over Adelaide to say well done to Alain Prost. Now I look for the little Frenchman as the Williams there of Nelson Piquet, which finished in second position, is wheeled away. Well, 6 points for the Williams team, which gives them 141. And that's not enough to beat the McLaren constructors' record of 143.5 in 1984. So near and yet so far. And I was saying...
And that really is the story of the Australian Grand Prix, isn't it? So near and yet so far. The title going to Alain Prost, 72 points, 2 points clear of Britain's Nigel Mansell, and Nelson Piquet third with 69. And really the disappointment of Nigel Mansell is matched by all his British fans watching in this country, and certainly by Frank Williams, who's been watching in the studio with us. Frank, what are your feelings for Nigel at this moment?
Well, desperately sorry for Nigel. It was circumstances completely out of his hands. I think Keke had a tyre failure. Certainly Nigel seems to have had that, and it's just something he couldn't control.
Let's take a look at precisely what did happen to Nigel. It was a tyre explosion, wasn't it?
Well, it's difficult to be certain sitting 12,000 miles away, but visually, watching your television set there, I think the first thing to let go probably was the tyre. It's shredding pretty rapidly there.
He did well to keep it all together, didn't he?
Brilliant, actually. Yes, quite a moment at very high speed.
A few questions, no doubt, in your mind now, and the thought may be that should he have come in for tyres earlier?
No, a failure like that, if it was a failure, happens very unexpectedly, and it wouldn't have been a problem really due to excessive wear. We changed, as you saw, and I called Nelson in pretty quickly afterwards as a precaution, and I would think right now there'll be quite a post-mortem going on in Australia about exactly what did happen.
I should think so. And for Nigel, let's give him another thought at this point. He's led the championship for the second half of the season. What do you think he achieved this year? He hasn't taken the title, but he's achieved an enormous amount, hasn't he?
Yes, he's established himself as one of the best 3 drivers in the world. He has an enormous amount of confidence, and if he's lost the championship this year, he'll certainly be attacking very strongly next year.
What are your thoughts for Nigel and for the team next year? Because the sport is going to change a bit next year, isn't it?
Well, there are new engine regulations. Fortunately, the rules are the same for everybody. I believe Honda will come out of their corner fighting hard. And I would say everyone's reasonably confident.
Right. And Alain Prost, the champion once again. Tremendous achievement. back-to-back championships for the first time since Jack Brabham in 1959. You must admire that.
Yes, it has to be said that both he and his team McLaren have done a brilliant job. It's regrettable they took it away from us, but that's how it goes.
Right, it's nice to see you able to smile after this. There will be that post-mortem, but the Williams team bounces back, doesn't it?
Well, I hope so, time after time, yes.
Splendid. Frank, many thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Just sorry it didn't finish in the celebration that we were all hoping for. We've got 2 more Grand Prix programmes coming up today. Highlights at 11 a.m. once again on BBC 2, and then 11:35 on BBC 1 tonight. Further highlights with all the reaction from Adelaide and the stories that surrounded that Australian Grand Prix. And really, it can all be just summed up in the events, that single incident at, what, just 2 minutes past 5, when Britain's Nigel Mansell's hopes really exploded in a shower of sparks and rubber. And the title went to Professor Prost once again. Bye-bye.
And look at that! Out that, and colossally, that's Mansell! That is Nigel Mansell, and the car absolutely shattered. He's fighting for control, and you can see what's happened. Mansell is out of the race. Now, this could change and will change the World Championship. And Alain Prost is virtually within sight of his 25th Grand Prix, his 2nd World Championship. An absolutely superb achievement. You have seen the crowd rising to this popular little Frenchman who has demonstrated yet again that he's the driver of the day, and he takes the checkered flag. He wins the Australian Grand Prix. He wins the World Championship of 1986. Absolute euphoria in the McLaren pit, and Keke and Alain Prost stops immediately. I wonder if that means he was so low on fuel that he had to stop. Look at him, he can hardly believe it himself.